The lingering conflicts between the three leading ladies of the Prime Limited series have not yet reached a breaking point halfway through its 6-episode season. Rather than pushing forward, however, the chapter titled Mid-Levels, named after the expatriates' affluent neighborhood in Hong Kong, digs deeper while remaining stationary, forcing Margaret, Hilary, Mercy, and their ensemble of supporting characters to face the wreckage of their lives. Now that the details of the show's fundamental tragedy, the unexpected abduction of Margaret's son Gus, have been established, the series follows what is essentially just another day in the lives of its cast, albeit the episode is not without its emotional challenges given the characters' circumstances. Mercy, for example, still experiences the pain of loneliness while juggling her catering jobs in her little apartment. Though she hardly ever tries to come out of this shell, she frequently sits by herself at restaurants and listens in on discussions she doesn't always comprehend. It's as if she believes that she deserves to be alone herself. This all changes when Charlie, a young local woman she overhears talking to someone at a restaurant, approaches her. When she speaks in Cantonese, Charlie answers with Korean cliches that Mercy doesn't understand, but Mercy responds with a practiced on Korean line, which is the only Cantonese she seems to know, and an easy way out of conversations. When they finally connect in English, Mercy is compelled to explain why she doesn't speak the language of her family, which further highlights how isolated she is from everyone in her life. Eventually, Charlie asks Mercy to go for a walk and attend a friend's musical performance. On the way, the two get to know one another a little more, but when they get to the location, the drama becomes a little confusing for a show that is generally so clear-cut and concise. While Charlie is getting a drink at the bar, she leaves Mercy and her companions and tells them to speak in English. They comply, jokingly stating that Charlie brought them some exotic upscale bird, but acting as though they were accustomed to the request. Here is where the intention and execution of the episode deviate, if only little, from each other. Two of Charlie's friends, a lesbian pair sitting at a table with other queer people, start talking to Mercy, who becomes overwhelmed and leaves the area. It makes obvious that Mercy would feel overwhelmed by the outpouring of love and human connection, but it's hard to pinpoint the precise reason behind her abrupt departure. Does she believe that Charlie wants to sleep with her instead of getting to know her as she is, considering the nature of the venue? Is there a homophobic presumption underlying this response? Maybe this is just an unfortunate inference. This scene's visual language, which consists of close-ups of mouths speaking words she doesn't comprehend, is similar to earlier Mercy-focused sequences when she takes in tones and moods without really hearing the words. However, nothing unusual happens in the conclusion of this scene, as she leaves for no apparent reason. But this is the only instance in which the show truly loses its dramatic focus. It is evident from numerous sequences in which Mercy sleeps with and spends time with David that, despite their conflicts coming from David's unflinchingly gloomy demeanor, these are two people who understand each other fundamentally. Naturally, Mercy has accepted responsibility for Gus going missing at a busy market. But David also discloses that a significant factor contributing to his falling out with Hilary is that in her desperation, Margaret accused him of being responsible for Gus's disappearance because he was in the vicinity, and Hilary was a few seconds too slow to defend him. Although it may seem absurd to let one's marriage fall apart and stew for a whole year, Jack Huston gives a believable performance in the role. Even though David seems to be aware of his irrationality, the hurt that he isn't confronting still exists. Thus, this David-Mercy relationship starts to make perfect sense even if neither character says so out loud. They feel like outsiders from their supposed communities, held responsible for the same Flashpoint incident that had disastrous knock-on effects on everyone's lives. Hilary is still feeling the effects of this shockwave. Since David moved into a hotel and started sending his laundry home to their maid, she is unsure of the status of their marriage and whether David will return for the dinner party they are holding. She puts on a brave face for the group and unintentionally receives her response when David unwittingly sends her an explicit text intended for Mercy. But in a contradictory manner, realizing that David is cheating clears things up and spurs her on to find him in his secret Irish pub. Here, as they start to get back together and David starts to open up, Hilary makes a casual comment about the bar's service, which makes David realize how spoiled and privileged their lives as Western expats in Hong Kong are, a reality he finds intolerable, and also crystallizes Hilary's irritable behavior toward her housekeeper throughout the episode. Although expats keep pushing against it, this aspect of the show's tapestry hasn't yet taken center stage, but it feels inevitable sooner rather than later. A stray jab from Margaret, who shows up at Hillary's apartment during dinner looking disheveled and requesting the spare key to Christopher's apartment. Hillary's recently deceased neighbor, about how she doesn't understand motherhood, is part of the reason Hillary decides to make amends with David and even suggests they continue trying for a child. Margaret's tale this week is still heavily influenced by the tremendous mysteries surrounding Gus's disappearance, even as Mercy and Hillary's subplots are influenced by the ongoing fallout. It turns out that while she is in her plastic bathtub at her remote Kowloon apartment, she is looking at an innocent photo of Gus and his Shih Tzu that the police decided she should have on her phone. However, Margaret becomes extremely upset because she believes that any piece of information that is not thoroughly investigated is a missed opportunity. This shows up as a misguided attempt to gather information about the late Christopher, as well as terrifying paranoia. Margaret remembers that she neglected to report to the police about a small scar on Gus's arm, which is a detail that barely registers in her peripheral vision but causes her to start taking detailed pictures of Philip and Daisy's bodies just in case, which verges on abuse. All of the characters seem to be on the edge of blowing up, possibly as a result of Margaret's cunning and crass takeover of a nearby grocery shop while looking for corn syrup for Philip's school project about volcanoes. It's just a matter of time until they are pushed over the brink and covered in ash by some sort of explosion. When it comes to Margaret's more unpredictable conduct, even Clark, who doesn't even consider himself a religious person, seems to be losing his cool. But because of Nicole Kidman's heartbreaking portrayal of a mother coming undone, her determination to follow up on any lead, no matter how small, is nothing if not convincing. This makes it all the more disturbing when the police eventually appear toward the end of the episode, claiming to have located a body that fits Gus's description. Margaret's desperation briefly gets contagious enough for us to think there's a remote chance the strands she's plucking might lead somewhere. However, in keeping with the show's recurring theme, this transient sensation of hope is quickly succeeded by an equally devastating devastation. For the time being, though, Margaret's entire world, along with every other character on the show, may have fallen apart once more. There are still unanswered questions as she rushes toward the morgue rather than waiting for morning. The first few scenes of the episode, which show a little child, roughly Gus's age, walking on a leash before cutting to Mercy's introspective close-up, set the tone for the entire chapter's feelings of regret and the notion that these characters are always thinking about the future. At Hillary's dinner party following her argument with Margaret, another amazing scene of filming takes place as she looks off into space in silent, brooding contemplation while her personal chef ignites a plate of baked Alaska. The Papiamashie volcano by Lyle Phillip also appears to be a ticking time bomb that is about to blow when Hillary's increasing discomfort is shown as the camera moves slowly in her direction. The last minutes of the episode are some of the most sharply dramatic ones the show has ever had. The edit alternates between a close-up of Kidman that feels unmoored, as though the camera and her sanity are beginning to slip, and her trembling hand shakily holding a postcard she thinks is some sort of clue when the police approach Margaret with the news that Gus's body may have been found. It's as though she's faced with the impossible choice of either continuing down a rabbit hole of denial or being consumed by overwhelming grief.